Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 114 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Today, I have joined with me via Skype, actually all over the country. I've got Ernie from Tethrd. I've got Sean from Tethrd, and also Taylor from Tethrd. If any of you don't know what Tethrd is, crawl out from under the rock that you're under. Tethrd sort of hit the ground. What, guys? A couple years ago.
Yeah, so we launched our business Memorial Day weekend last year. So call it the 1st of June 2018.
Okay. So really this is your second season, not really your second year. Second season. Have you guys always been saddle hunters?
Yeah, I mean, always is kind of a long term, but most of us have over 10 years worth of saddle hunting under our belts before we started this. Saddle hunting has always been kind of a niche and kind of a hidden group of people. And so we had always been part of that little nerdy community before Tethrd had come along. And now we're starting to make it more mainstream.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I hunt at a property. It's a hunt club. There are 40 members. It's a little over 4,000 acres. And like 5 years ago, everybody laughed at me in the parking lot at my little diaper. You know, they kept laughing like, "What's that diaper thing you hunt out of?" And now I have guys calling me all the time from the club that are trying to get discounts on saddles and stuff and asking questions and want to know more about it. So it's been funny to watch kind of how far saddle hunting has come in the last 5 years, from what Ernie's talking about as that like nerdy, niche-y community to now being, people seeing them all over the place and realizing the benefits of them. It's pretty cool.
Taylor, what's your role in the company?
I work with the pro staff and also help on the business development side. I have a pretty extensive business background and was happy to help bring that to the table and help the team out in that capacity.
Cool. I suspect it's like anything else. It was a passion, and it was easy to jump in and help out and lend your expertise. I completely get that. Sean, what is it that you do for the company, just so everybody can get some context when each of you are talking, maybe where your background is, where you're coming from in the whole story?
Yeah, and I primarily do design and patent work for Tethrd. I kind of started out with Ernie.
You do the glamorous stuff, in other words.
Yeah, with Ernie, we had an idea to build the best saddle hunting platform ever, and it was actually going to run out of a company that he at that time was called Ernie Outdoors. And that platform today is the Predator platform, and it was with a few other guys that are really in the saddle hunting. And eventually that became part of Tethrd. But now I primarily do patent work, so a lot of the things that we were constantly trying to innovate and bring new stuff into the market, and we're obviously trying to protect our ideas as much as we can. And so just doing the paperwork, reviewing the patents, and keeping us going forward.
So it sounds like, Ernie, you and Greg kind of started the company, or was Greg an afterthought? We can say whatever we want about him because he's not here.
He can't defend himself.
No, actually, it's kind of an interesting deal the way this started. Basically, like Sean had mentioned, there was a handful of us that had gotten together, and we were frustrated with the fact that you couldn't find a decent platform anywhere for saddle hunting. And finally, a group of us got together and said, "Hey, let's let's put all our heads together, design this thing, and we'll figure out how to pay for it later. Little did I know at the same time, Greg was going down the path of how do I make a saddle? And so he was working on designing a saddle and getting it together. And basically he had called me up one day and he said, hey, I know you're working on this platform. I've been working on a saddle. What do you think about us teaming up? And at that point, I was actually really hesitant to do it. I was, trying to keep identity with Ernie's Outdoors and this, that, and the other. It took a little bit of convincing and some time. And then basically that February, we met face to face for the first time at Saddlepalooza, which is a wild boar hunt we host down in Georgia each year. And we got to talking and said, okay, let's do this. And then we really hit the gas and got everything going and moving forward at that point. But it was kind of like we were both working on two sides of the same coin and just hadn't put them back together yet.
Okay, gotcha. So that's how it was sort of born. One of you was into the platform, the other was into designing the saddle, and the two just sort of came together, and that makes complete sense.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was.
Cool. So I guess how's things going overall?
It's been going really well. We try and keep everybody up to date as much as we can, but obviously there's some people that we've missed. If you followed Tethrd at all, our biggest problem has always been getting orders out. We've created the momentum, we've created all of that, but what we had trouble with was the manufacturing. And what we've been able to do is over the course of the last year, we've really dedicated a lot of our resources into getting that delay down. We've hired several people. We've brought other factories online. We've done a lot of things so that we can get that lead time down. And so for us, we're really celebrating because at the time of this recording, we've dropped our lead time at Tethrd from somewhere around 12 weeks this summer down to we're around a week on some saddles and 2 weeks on another, and all of our accessories are up to date. So we've really made huge strides. We've had to make some tough decisions on how to do some of that, and we've had to hire some people to do it. But what we've been able to accomplish is being able to get that lead time down and get that gear in people's hands. So now we really feel that once we've got that hurdle accomplished, the sky's the limit for us.
Okay. So
I think it's important to note real quick, though, how good of a job Ernie and Greg did in coming out with Tethrd. And it's really cool to me what they did. They reached out to a handful of guys that were longtime saddle hunters. So, the majority of the group of guys that did the beta testing on the, first production runs of saddles, we all have 10 plus years of experience hunting from a saddle. And they reached out to us and basically said, we want to make the ultimate saddle hunting gear possible. We don't care about what our profit margins are. We want to give the public the best saddle hunting gear we can. Go. And check this out, give us your feedback. And then they would listen to the feedback and there'd be instant revisions, and then boom, go, and then instant revisions. And, the end result of that is, the current saddle and the platform, and they're amazing. I mean, as a guy so background on me, I spend anywhere from 150 to 200 days a year hunting. I hunt in the suburbs of DC. I help, reduce an incredibly overpopulated deer herd, which allows me to hunt year round. And so with all the properties that I hunt, all the different days that I hunt, a saddle is really my only option because, I'm bouncing around to sometimes over 1,000 trees, in a couple years. I can't take the time to have a tree stand in all of those. My wife would have divorced me years ago. So, by being able to spend that much time in a saddle and give feedback and have other guys that hunt just as much as I do and give feedback, they've really created the ultimate platform. And it was just so cool to be a part of that, and really cool to have owners that wanted to do that. They're not saying like, how can we make this as inexpensively as possible, or how can we drive the cost down? They didn't care about the cost. They just wanted to make the best saddle possible, and I think that's why you're seeing it, really take off.
Well, I guess that sort of feeds into my next question. And Taylor, I'll start off with you, and then we can go with Ernie next, and then you can follow up the end. Is that all right? There, Sean?
Yeah, that's fine.
Why? I think a lot of people out there wonder, like, why a saddle? Why should I complicate things that are already complicated? We've got enough gear, coming with us. Why should I do a saddle? If each of you can address that.
Well, I don't see any reason to not use a saddle. So my answer to that would be, why not? I mean, if you're comparing, a tree stand versus a tree saddle, let's say like a mobile run and gun tree stand setup versus a tree saddle, the saddle's lighter, the saddle's safer. You can hunt any tree possible, whether it's, I'm a big guy, I'm 6'3" and like 250 pounds. I've hunted trees that are 4 or 5 inches in diameter that literally I was like, man, I might snap this thing in half. But it's the tree I needed to be in. And I've hunted trees that were, 5 feet diameter where I just screwed in steps all the way up and didn't have any, worry. I mean, you can't have the versatility, the safety, or the ease of use or comfort out of a tree stand that you can with a tree saddle. And also, I really like the fact that people can't steal it. People don't know where I'm hunting. It allows me to be very discreet in where I'm hunting, whether that be on public land spots or also, here in the suburbs. And, the safety, comfort, and in fact, you can hide behind the tree and ease of use. I mean, it's a no-brainer. So I don't think there's really any additional stuff you have to carry. I mean, you can preset spots just like you can preset tree stands, or you can go mobile. But regardless, that saddle's always on your waist, and you don't have to worry about, it not being there when you get there or anything else. It's really just a home run product.
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest things I like about it is it's fun, right? So I'm an antsy person and whatever else, and for me, that I'm able to hunt longer and do more with a saddle just because I enjoy it more. One thing I would probably take a little bit of a redirection is, I don't think it's more complicated. When you mention why complicate something that's already there, I don't think it's any more complicated. I think it's just a learning curve. I think it's people aren't used to it, and so once you get more used to it and you know how to use it, I don't think it's any more of a hindrance than anything people are normally used to. For me, I was a tree trimmer for a bunch of years. So for me, it actually made more sense than some of the other stands out there, because I've lived my life in a saddle as an occupation for so many years. So, it's got a lot of advantages. Obviously, it's lightweight, it's mobile, the ability to shoot all the way around the tree and make some shots that you might not have been able to before, the ability to disguise your places if you're hunting. I mean, the list goes on and on. And anybody who's listened to any of us preach about the benefits of saddles has heard us talk. It's one of those things where, people say it all the time. There's vegans, there's CrossFit guys, and then there's saddle hunters, and they all like to talk about it. And
I like it.
It's one of those things where, it's you're gonna hear it. If somebody's gotten into saddle hunting and really taken a hold of it, they're gonna let you know about all the best ways that they found from it. So I don't know. For me, I really like the fun. I think I like the uniqueness of it. I like to do something different.
Sure.
That was kind of a cool thing to start. And then, like I said, I was a tree trimmer for years. So for me, it came naturally. I spent so many hours in an arborist saddle that to do it for fun, it just made sense.
Right.
And then I guess last for me, I mean, the guys covered covered almost all the topics, but I'd like to emphasize the comfort. I am so much more comfortable in a saddle than I am in a tree stand. Not only do you feel safe, at height, but my body in general just does better in a saddle. When I used to do all day sits, dark to dark, all week long for the rut, my lower back would really start to kill me, and my butt would hurt, and I just didn't feel like sitting anymore. And with the saddle, especially if you add a back band to it, you can just lay back and stretch your lower back, and being able to do that has done wonders as far as comfort for me. And then I think secondly, one thing I really, really always liked about the saddle was that it creates shot opportunities where it would be difficult to find them in a tree stand. I think if you've hunted in a tree stand long enough, you've been in a situation where there's a branch in the way, and you either try to duck down, you try to get higher, you may even stand on your seat, to somehow create the additional mobility in the saddle, creates opportunities. You're able to make small adjustments or even large adjustments in your position, and maneuver around the canopy and create shot opportunities. And I think that's just one of the many benefits of saddle hunting.
Another thing I think that's important that you touched on there, Sean, with the comfort is, late season or after the foliage drops or even before, staying still is so paramount. And the more comfortable you are, the less movement you have. I mean, there have been times that I've been in my saddle and I am literally so comfortable, I'll realize that I haven't moved in like over an hour and a half. I mean, and when I say moved, I mean, my position has not changed a centimeter because I'm sitting there playing on my phone most of the time. But, I mean, it hasn't moved a stitch. And I think that's something that's really important, especially if you're hunting, somewhat pressured animals anywhere, that being absolutely still is paramount, and that comes from the comfort.
Agreed. I guess I'd like to, unless someone else has got something to add, I'd like to take this in another direction here real quick, if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah, I'm game.
All right. So give us some tips. I've hunted out of a saddle, not a ton. I hunt primarily out of a tree stand that's already preset because I've got a pretty good sized lease. I believe it's just about 2 miles long, north and south, and it hunts a lot bigger than it is. It's not that wide in some spots, but so there's a lot of ground to cover. So I've got 15 to 25, I don't even know how many sets, and there's also some preset spots for saddles just because they work better there. And I've just got sticks up a tree, and it's ready to go. All I have to do is slip in there, and up a tree I go. And I guess I use it in application. I use it in places that I feel like I'm going to be compromised by sitting in a tree stand. Do you guys subscribe to that at all? That it's easier to hide yourself in one of those than it is, standing, perpendicular to the ground, or parallel with the tree itself?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, not only are you able to hide behind the tree, but you can also, I mean, the profile of yourself looks a lot more natural than a person standing on a platform or sitting on a platform. You almost look like a limb.
Mm-hmm.
I will add, I mean, you did kind of touch on this about, that you had some saddle sets and you had some tree stand sets. And I mean, one thing I always like to emphasize with anyone who tries a saddle, I told them it's not one or the other. You can use both. In fact, the best hunters I know often use both, because there are trees where it just simply makes sense to sit in a tree stand, and there might be trees that it just makes sense to sit only in a saddle. For me, if it works for both, I'm picking the saddle every time. But there are definitely circumstances where a tree stand might make sense. Like for example, I think most people would agree they would rather be positioned so they're facing the deer as they approach. If there's only one tree in the spot and the deer are approaching that tree, if one side of the tree is set up, is amenable for setup and the other side isn't, so if it's facing the deer, you're going to pick the tree stand. If it's away from the deer, you're going to pick the saddle. The same thing, types of trees. If you're in a conifer that's got limbs all the way around it, and the 360 mobility thing kind of goes away. In that particular case, you might still want to use a tree stand, just because you're going to be your shot's most likely going to be behind you in a saddle, versus in a tree stand, it's going to be directly in front of you. So, there's definitely pluses and minuses with both setups and but as far as and I kind of got off topic here, back to the original point, it's really tough to beat the ability to hide in a saddle and being able to hide around the tree. Especially if you got a big enough tree, you can actually, as a deer would approach, you can actually change your position, constantly hide around the tree, and then as the deer approaches, you'd be actually even conceal your draw shot with the tree itself, and essentially execute a shot in stealth.
Yeah, I think the stealth factor of a saddle is the greatest, one of the greatest attributes to it, where you can do exactly what Sean's talking about. You can draw from behind the tree, then slowly kind of move around, position yourself for the shot, and that animal has no idea you were there, or also just the ability to constantly adjust. But, I also agree with Sean that, a lot of us have toolboxes in our garage. We don't just have one tool in them. I play a lot of golf. I don't carry just one club with me, right? I mean, the saddle is a tool for hunting, just like everything else is. And, it's a very versatile tool. It's like the Leatherman that you can have on your hip all the time, because there's so many different, uses for it. But, I mean, I've used my saddle turkey hunting before, where I've just sat on the ground, a foot above the ground, and just used it turkey hunting, and it works great. I mean, there are a ton of different things you can do with the saddle. And, I think the biggest barrier to saddle hunting is the fact that it feels odd. If you have spent your entire life hunting from a tree stand, it is 100% counterintuitive to hike out over the platform line and feel resistance on your tether, right? But once you get past that curve, that learning curve, and you get comfortable in the saddle and realize that there's no way for you to fall out of it, it's an incredible tool. I mean, I've had deer stop before. I had a deer last year stop right behind a tree. Her vitals were blocked by about an 8-inch diameter tree. And I put my foot at about waist level and pushed off the tree and created a bigger separation in that angle and smoked her. And I was actually hunting with a buddy of mine that was 40 yards away, saw the whole thing, and was going nuts in the tree because he thought it was the coolest thing ever. He still to this day calls me a tree ninja. And that's something that you can do in the saddle that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do in a tree stand. So just the fact that the versatility is there. But, to answer your question originally, there are different areas where, a tree stand might work, saddle might work, but, I'm going to take the saddle 99.9% of the time, just because that's what I'm comfortable with. And a lot of the trees that I've pre-scouted are saddle trees. They work better for a saddle. But, it's nice to have options.
Well, that begs the question: what constitutes a good saddle tree? Obviously, you don't want to be sitting in an evergreen with a bazillion branches because that's just gonna make it's like shooting through a cement wall. Not gonna happen. But what makes up a good saddle tree? I think I know, but I want to know if I know.
Well, I think everybody on this podcast would have a slightly different perfect tree. And we all hunt in kind of different areas. But for me, I love the tulip poplars or oaks that have either a fork in them or a split between the trees to where I can get up in. If you're looking at a side profile of the tree and there's one that's like real nice north and south or vertically, and then there's another one behind it that's got a little bit of kind of that like 45-degree angle to it.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, that's the ticket, man. I'm gonna get up in that sucker at about 20 feet to my platform. I'm gonna be leaning back with my body against that other tree. Not only do I feel like I'm in my man cave snoozing on my leather couch with a glass of bourbon in my hand, but your silhouette is completely blocked from any line of sight. I've had deer around me for 30, 45 minutes feeding on oaks and an oak flat while I'm in a tree like that, and they don't have a clue in the world that you're even anywhere close.
So one of the things that I've been dying to ask, because it's one of the things that I struggle with, and I don't think that I'm probably alone, and I doubt that this will be the first time that you've got the question and answered it, but what are some of the tips and strategies that you guys employ when it comes to keeping comfortable in a saddle? I mean, and let's be honest, there's times where it's hard to keep comfortable in a tree stand. So it's not that, one's a whole bunch more uncomfortable than the other. It's just what would you say is a good some good tips to stay comfortable outside of using things like knee pads and things of that nature.
Oh, again, I think everybody here would have a different kind of answer for you, but I wear knee pads. I like to. Well, let's rewind. So people are going to have different natural comfort positions. Some people like to lean back. Some people like to sit. I think the biggest thing is if you're a first-time saddle hunter, get the saddle, get it out, and play around with it at ground level. Make sure you're comfortable with how it works, and start changing, how high your tether is in relation to your forehead. The rope that goes around the tree that then comes down and clicks into your bridge is called the tether, and changing its height in relation to your forehead while you're standing on a platform or ring of steps drastically changes the angle that you drape off the tree at, which then will change the pressure points on your backside, whether it be you feel it more in your hips or feel it more in your lower, butt area. But play around with that height, and then also play around with, where the connection point is on that tether between the rope and your bridge. So, those two adjustment points really, really, really change comfort levels. And, for me, even when I was hunting out of a different saddle, every saddle I've had different spots on the tree that are comfortable. For me in the mantis, I'm really comfortable at like eyebrow level with my tether around the tree. And then, the rope is kind of hard to describe, but I just know how much tension I need to have on the bridge before I lean back. But I'm sure the other guys probably have very different comfort points, but finding the angle that you like to kind of hang at naturally is very important. And then I think Sean touched on it earlier, but the back band for me was a total game changer. Having the back band is really important because it just kind of spreads out another, point to distribute the weight on. Mm-hmm. And then knee pads as well. I really like my most comfortable position is leaning, but my second most comfortable is sitting in the tree, and I'll get into a spot an hour and a half before first light sometimes, I will put my face on the bridge and I will fall dead asleep. I will put my hat brim up in the bridge so my head won't move, and I will lean down, and I've slept through hunts accidentally by doing that before. Like, that's how comfortable I am.
Accidentally.
Yeah, accidentally. Yeah.
And another thing I'd add that Taylor, that he covered I would call the big macro adjustments that you can make in a saddle. I mean, one thing that is unique about the tethered saddle is we have these microfit adjusters. It's a modular component that goes on the saddle, and actually what it does is it moves the top strap and the bottom strap further or closer together depending on how you have it adjusted. And by moving it closer together, you create a cup.
Okay.
And for some guys, this cup is a really big deal. It's like if it wasn't there, the saddle wouldn't be for them. The cup is very, very important. So the best way to adjust that is if you have it on like the tethered saddle, is to start in the fully open position and just slowly, it up, millimeter by millimeter until you find your sweet spot. But that would be after that you've made the macro adjustments that you've done with that Taylor mentioned. But yeah, a lot of guys really, really like these microfit adjusters.
It's also important to note that, those adjustments that Sean's talking about and still the high like macro adjustments that I'm talking about, they take time to figure out. Like you have to, you can't go into saddle hunting and going in with the expectations of, I'm going to go play with this in my backyard for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to go sit all day tomorrow, dark to dark, in a real world hunt and expect, the comfort that you're hearing about. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 hunts of sitting there for 3 or 4 hours before you find a spot where you're like, oh, I might want a little more cup or a little less cup, or, move up my connection point literally a half of an inch will make all the difference in the world. So it takes a little while to truly get dialed in. But my saddle now is as comfortable as like my old leather baseball glove. When your hand goes in it, it's just like, this is perfect. And I could spend hours in it without issue with total comfort. Whereas I can't say the same about that with a tree stand.
And Taylor, I would bet you can agree with this too. Once you've got that dialed in, you could pick up another saddle and within 10 minutes have it adjusted because you just kind of know what you like.
100%.
I can get into a tree that I've never been in before that maybe has this, that, or the other going on in there, and I don't have to look that hard about where my tether's going to go, where my Prusik is going to go, how this is all going to go. And within a couple of minutes, I'm like dialed in, just simply because I've done it. And I think that that's something that can't be like discounted. Is once you get the hang of it, man, it's easy to figure it out every time.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's no difference really in learning the saddle comfort or just learning something else new. Once it becomes known to you, it's second nature to find comfort. Like, I don't climb up in a tree. I could walk back in a mile somewhere, or I could walk 30 yards to a tree and hunt behind somebody's house and climb up and have it be a tree that I've never hunted before. And I'm completely comfortable within like 90 seconds of being at the top of the tree, just because I know, where the tether goes, where to clip in. I know how to dial in a saddle. Like what Ernie is saying, I could take a saddle off the shelf of somewhere, put it on, and have it be perfectly hunt ready, comfortable within, a couple minutes, just because it's something that I've learned. But, people just need to understand that when they're diving into saddle hunting for the first time, it just takes a little while to get used to how you personally like it. And that's kind of the cool thing about saddle hunting is there is that much versatility. If I'm in a lone wolf, I love my lone wolves. I used to hunt from them all the time, but like there are only a couple adjustments I can make, right? And I can add a new seat cushion, and like what you see is what you get. But in a saddle, I mean, there are millions of different, combinations that are possible to get to comfort or fitting different body types and different, people's preferences on what they find comfortable. And that's what's so cool about that platform and the versatility of it.
So when you guys are going into a new area, is it uncommon? Like, let's say, for instance, the recent public land challenge that you guys did up in Michigan. Are you're taking some sticks with you, and you're hanging and hunting right there, correct? I mean, that's got to be one of the benefits of having a saddle is being able to be pretty mobile.
I would say most of my hunts are exactly what you described. Where I go in, I find a place that I'm going to set. Now, it might be something that I've scouted out in the past, but I go in and set up new every time. Just because I have the ability of bringing my stuff in, setting it up, and it doesn't take that much effort. And so, yeah, I would say most of what I experience is exactly what you described, where I'm going in, I'm finding sign, I'm finding a place to set up. I set up and I go. And I think it's just more convenient with my saddle than it has been with other methods I've done in the past.
Yeah, it's more streamlined also, Ernie. I mean, to your point there, like, I mean, you walk in, a lot of us have different climbing methods, but, I like sticks. I can walk in, throw a stick on the tree, and in one complete, like, seamless climb up the tree, I'm up hunting, and then I can come down. I mean, even on urban spots where, I might hunt the same quarter-acre lot 30 times in 1 year, right? But I'm not going to hunt the same tree more than 3 or 4 times. I might hunt, one tree, then the tree that's like 10 feet over, and then a tree that's like 5 yards from that one, and kind of bounce around just to keep the deer guessing. Because the last thing I want is a deer to walk in and look at the tree that I'm hunting from. And on larger tracts of ground or public land, like what Ernie's talking about, literally just walk in, find sign, hunt the sign, and it might be an area that you've pre-scouted. You kind of know what tree you're going to, but you don't need to leave climbing sticks in the woods. You don't need to leave climbing methods in the woods. You can literally just go hunt and keep all your stuff with you. And it doesn't take that long to get set up. I mean, how long does it take you guys to go from once you've identified the tree you're going to hunt from, how long does it take you to go from the bottom of the tree to up with an arrow nocked ready to kill something?
I would say if I'm going crazy slow, like buckbed style, Dan Infault style, 20, 25 minutes, plus camera gear setup.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother onion to peel back there.
Yeah, I would say I'm in that same 20 to 25 minutes, taking my time. If it's a tree that I've preset with some kind of a climbing method, whether it's some screw-in steps or bolts or a ladder stick or whatever, I would say I'm every bit as fast as anybody who's got a regular tree stand set in the woods, except for the fact that I'm not having to leave my saddle out there. So my major investment comes and goes with me, and my $20 climbing stick, you can buy a 20-foot stick from Walmart for nothing. You can buy it even cheaper off of Craigslist. Leave that in the woods. Nobody's going to steal that. And now I can be up and down in no time at all. The hardest part is going to be setting your climbing method and climbing up without trying to make a bunch of noise. Now, in an ideal world, I can take that 20 minutes and shrink it way down with a set of climbing spurs. But then you run into legality and issues on public land. But with my climbing spurs, I can cut that time in half at least, if not a third.
Yeah, you're literally walking up the tree at that point.
And you're talking, just to clarify for everybody, when you're talking climbing spurs, you're talking about what the folks that used to work on utility poles, things of that nature, just go right up a tree or go up a pole with, right? They're exactly. a device
you can
that
walk right up.
Yeah, it straps to the inside of your your legs and you use it and stab it in, and one run right after the other. You go right up the tree using a lineman's belt, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. I think the common misconception with these saddles is that they're just really meant for public hunting. And I know that you guys spend a great deal of time hunting public, and I've done that as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have a saddle when I hunted public, but I still was able to get it done. I lost quite a few pounds, which was great. But
Don't tell my wife that.
Yeah,
she'll burn my saddles.
right. It just, I think a lot of folks think that it's just for public land, and it's not. I do get, to your point, that there is some certain benefits to not leaving something out in the timber, but like in the case of me on my lease, what it does is it supplements, a whole fleet of tree stands, and it extends what I already have into really endless possibilities and an ability to, like, let's take, for instance, an old doe, and I don't know if anybody's going to subscribe to this theory or not. She comes in and she wins you, and she knows that you're in that tree. And then the next 2 times that you hunt there over the course of the season, she always is going to look up in that tree. One of the things that I've done a few times now, because they're great spots, especially in the rut, because I'm close to doe bedding areas, is I've left that stand there and hunted out of the saddle relatively close, and they have not caught me. So there's applications outside of just the using it on public and things like that I think a lot of folks don't think about. Do any of you guys employ tricks like that?
Oh, for sure. I had I hunt a piece of property that's right by my house. Granted, this is in the suburbs of DC, but there's another gentleman that I don't know who also has permission on that property, and he's got like 4 or 5 lock-on tree stands. And there was a buck out there that I was after last year, and I have a video of this actually on YouTube. It's pretty funny. This buck walks in. He's coming back from feeding in this, what we would call in the suburbs, a field, but it's like a half-acre septic field with grass on it. But he's walking in off the septic field into the wood line, and he's stopped. And for about 10 or 12 minutes, he just stared at that hunter's tree stand. And I was 10 yards from that tree stand behind a tree with my bow in hand. And as soon as that deer figured out that hunter wasn't in there, he walked in and I shot him. And I mean, would I have been able to harvest that deer without a saddle? Maybe, but definitely not if I was in that guy's tree stand. I mean, the saddle really helps hide you on public or private or anywhere. It's really a versatile tool. I had another buddy who has some properties, and he had a similar situation to what you're describing. He actually shot over the back of a doe. He skinned her and put a large chunk through the top of her tenderloin. And every time that doe would come back into that area, she would stand there and blow at him and clear out the entire bedding area that the deer were in. And he had a really nice buck on that property he was trying to kill. He kept complaining to me that he couldn't harvest this doe. And I said, I'll kill her. And I climbed up his ladder stand, hung a stick above the seat section, climbed another climbing stick up. My buddy's scared of heights, so he only hunts like 12 feet off the ground with his ladder stand. Climbed up another climbing stick, hung my platform on the backside, and shot that doe the first night that she came out, and looked at the tree stand, realized he wasn't in there, came out, and I shot her. So, I mean, there are tons of times that has happened, and I mean, it works.
Well, and I think a saddle lets you be adaptive too. How many times do you get out and you're in your tree, you're in your tree that you were planning on being on. It's now 3:00 and the wind has shifted in a way that you hadn't kind of anticipated. you can get down and walk to the other side and climb up a different tree, and you can reset up rather quickly. Especially if on private land, let's say you have a trail fork or a heavy traveled area, you could set up several trees, 4 different winds on that same funnel, and then when you come in with your saddle, just climb up the one that makes sense for that day.
Right.
I actually have a couple times, even in hill country, where I have 2 trees relatively close to each other, and once the thermal switches in the late morning, I'll just switch that other tree just a short distance away.
I hate thermals. Like, I hunt strictly hill country, and they just irritate me. I had a situation on, what was it, Monday night, where I had this buck pretty well figured out and went in to kill him, and was sure I was in the right spot, and I was, but the thermals got me right at the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But that's the way it goes. So he'll live to, I guess, taunt me another day.
Live to die. Live to die tomorrow.
Right on, exactly. Well, we're getting past the amount of time that I wanted to take from you guys, and I know we've really just scratched the surface. But if you guys could, real quickly before I let you go, tell us how we can follow each of you on social media and sort of watch your season unfold, and anything else that you want our listeners to know in terms of how they can get a hold of you, or how they can order a saddle, or what they should order, or things like that. Whoever wants to start can start, and if just, again, tell us where we can get in touch with you, and anything you might want our listeners to know.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ernie Power. To date, I think there's only one other Ernie Power on Facebook, so I'm pretty easy to find. But also, you can follow everything we do on the Tethrd Nation YouTube, tethrdnation.com on our website. That's where you can go to get all kinds of useful information on saddle hunting, look at some new gear, look at some different things that are out there. There's going to be all kinds of instructionals and frequently asked questions, and then obviously our store for any of you that are looking to purchase anything.
Right. Okay.
Yep. On top of all the content that I send over for Tethrd Nation, you can find me, Taylor, on Instagram at Urban Bowman, and I put a lot of stuff on YouTube as well. If you just search Hunt Urban, you'll see a bunch of videos and saddle stuff and tons of junk. And also, there's a cool First Light video that they did about me. I think it was last year. It's called In City Limits. It's a short film about urban hunting. Definitely worth checking out. So hopefully anybody can check that out. And any questions, feel free to reach out to Ernie or Sean or myself about anything we can do to help for saddle hunting questions or answers. That's what we're here for.
Cool.
And, and I'm Sean Chadwick. Obviously Instagram and Facebook. And as far as additional content, I'll be pushing all my videos through Tethrd going forward, as we actually have people dedicated to actually media. So actually real excited about the content that's going to come out of Tethrd Nation in this next calendar year. Just having a team of folks that are really good at what they do.
Guys, who's on your team in terms of maybe someone notable that's probably already being followed? Like, for instance, the hunting public, they are using your stuff exclusively. Anybody else that you want to mention?
Oh, we have a really fantastic team of not only pro staffers, but also guys that are part of the Tethrd family. Andy May out there is somebody you might know that is a pretty renowned critter killer on public land and in a short time. Mark Kenyon's also fallen in love with the saddle stuff, and tons of other guys that are kind of on the team that really, really, really help out. I mean, our kind of founding core was Sean, a guy that we call Huck. His name's Josh, Jared Schaefer, myself, and Carl. But on top of that, John Eberhart has been hunting out of our saddle. He loves our stuff, and he's kind of the godfather of saddle hunting. You already mentioned the Hunting Public and Andy, I guess Ted Bright, Adrian Wilson. I mean, there are a ton of guys out there that are hunting out of our saddles, and a lot more people are starting to see the light of how great a saddle truly is and how versatile they are.
Yeah, as far as related channels too, on as far as social media, Greg, co-owner of the company, has a great YouTube channel, G2 Outdoors. A lot of good content on there, and a lot of stuff pertaining to saddle hunting and DIY.
Okay.
Also, Jared was previously associated with Hunt Appalachia, and a lot of good content, a lot of saddle hunting videos, fun stuff. So go check out those channels as well.
Cool. Well, hey guys, we'll do this again. It's a huge subject, really. It's not just as simple as climbing up and getting strapped in and going hunting. There's little pieces of information that folks really need to educate themselves with, so that it's not a bad experience. I think it could be said for just about any piece of hunting gear. If you're not using it correctly, or not using it the way that it was designed, it's not going to work the way that you want it to work or expect it to work. So it would behoove you to spend some time checking out all the different resources that are out there. And Lord knows there is a ton. Whether you're hunting out of a tethered saddle or not, there's a ton of stuff about saddle hunting out there. And I just started it last year and love it. One of our team members has got my other saddle because I'm going to try out yours here in the upcoming weeks. I've got a hunter coming in, and I'm going to hopefully film her most of the time out of the saddle. So I'm looking forward to that. But I would just say educate yourself and make sure that you're knowing what you're getting into. And the smartest thing that I ever did with respect to a saddle was took it out in the yard and shot bow with it.
For sure.
Yeah, we absolutely, one of the things that we always stress is when you get your new saddle equipment, and it doesn't have to be ours, it just saddle hunting in general. When you get your new saddle equipment, get in the back.
Well, hell, Ernie, it's your show. You might as well plug your product, right?
Well, we can do that, but at the same time, our mantra has always been get in a saddle. I know that if you get into saddle hunting, eventually you're going to find me, just because we believe in our stuff that much. So we don't really feel we have to push our product. It sells itself. But yeah, practice on the ground. Get that time in on the ground. Get what you need so that you don't want to get to where you do it right every time. You want to get to where you can't do it wrong. And, that's when that muscle memory starts getting in and things going, because the last thing you want to do is be in a high-stress situation in the dark. Maybe your headlamp isn't working right. Something's going on. Now all of a sudden you're at the top of the tree trying to figure this out. That's not the time to learn.